Okay, gang, here we are at the end. This is hopefully going to be a short little wrap up of chapter one. So let's go ahead and take a look in your textbooks at that couple. You got a couple of maps in there. One is showing San Francisco, and the other one is showing here Chongqing. And I wanted to show you kind of the difference between the two as you analyze them. And culture played a role in how those cities formed. And so, yes, the landforms played a part, but one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Asians really like um, big crowded markets. Now you see some avenues through here from chili peppers to whatever, Chinese lanterns and all this kind of stuff. And I've been in this city. I'm going to show you a picture I got from it. But one of the things they like is the sights, the smells, the interaction with people, the touching of people. And I'm not kidding you. When they go into a store like a Walmart, it's a little troubling for them sometimes if Walmart has like really big aisles. And yes, they have Walmart, so I've been in them, and they're pretty nice, as far as Walmart goes. But the different cultural concepts of the smells and interacting with people, it's a whole different shopping experience for them. As your book points out, there's a lot less people in San Francisco that take up a whole lot more space. And it says something about our personal envelope of space. And that idea is if I can reach your face with my hand and slap you, that means you're too close to me. Give me my envelope of space. And we'll talk more about these things called proxemics later in the semester, but understand how that goes into developing a place. Now, I saw lots of things when I was in the city. The ones that I remember were all these ducks tied up and a dude riding them into the market on his bicycle. I mean, he had probably like 50 to 80 ducks on there. There were all kinds of cages and different chickens and stuff. And I remember this tiny little guy who was bent over under the weight of all the produce he was bringing into the market. But he waddled up in there, and I was like, wow, so he must have come from the hinterland to bring his goods to sell. But if you haven't figured it out yet, this dude is frying a hog's face. They eat lots of pork, okay? And this is in Chongqing. So he's got an acetylene torch in his hands, and maybe you can see the flame right here. I don't speak their language to know, but I know exactly what the lady said to him when I was at that stall. She was asking for a piece of pork fat that she could use to put in the greens she was going to cook. That's a very southern thing, is it not? I grew up on pork and beans. There's beans in pork in the greens that we cooked. I grew up a country boy, okay? And you'll see this in the next chapter too, because I'm going to show you some more gross stuff like this. But this says something again about the people in that area and how they define their spaces. And usually, that envelope of space is almost non-existent. These streets are really crowded, and if you're not a touchy-feely person, you better get ready for it or just don't go here at all, okay? So notice I put Chinatown. So you'll see these kinds of passageways going into a certain area. Now, I'm going to be honest here. If you go into a certain city, a certain part of a city, and you start seeing gang signs, if you can't read those, that's your hint that you need to leave. If you can read those, you still might not be welcome there. This one doesn't mean go away, but it certainly is a transition point going from outside the area into the area. And we see this in a lot of Eastern cultures too. The Japanese have torii gates, and we'll see those later in the semester too. But it goes from the profane world to the exalted world. And this passageway is that it transports you into something else. So this is usually the gateway to a Chinatown. I don't care if it's in Washington, D.C. or out in San Francisco, which is where they created and invented fortune cookies. Yes, it's not from old China. Anyway, but they did do laundry in the same way that Vietnamese have kind of cornered the market on, nail joints. So the food, the services in those areas, you kind of know what you're going to get when you pass through this portal, if you will. Okay, so looking at diffusion and some other things, just hitting on some of the maps and wrapping this up though. Your textbook notes the mapping of H1N1, influenza. This is where we get our word for flu. And there's different kinds. And we will probably talk about other diseases in here, from cholera to HIV and AIDS. Certainly, the next textbook that comes out is absolutely all the textbooks that are going to come out in geography is going to deal with this pandemic. A lot of this is going to be about diffusion, and you can see here this is called a cartogram. So it shows you the map of the world, but it's representing the cumulative cases in an area of the larger the circle, the more people were infected. And we're seeing these kinds of things. What I want to warn you about is this. I really get tired of seeing the maps that show infection rates in the United States, and all it is really a heat signature map that basically says about the area that New York has a lot of infections, LA has a lot of infections, bigger cities have lots of infections. Well, that's where all the people are. So I really take umbrage at news organizations when they flash that thing up and think they're actually giving us information that matters. It's just a population map in a different guise, and this happens a lot. So I really want to impress upon you the importance of being able to critique what you're seeing. What aren't they telling you? What are they trying to lead you to? What do you see here? Are there relevant questions about a thing? I'm talking about critical thinking. And in an era of fake news and deep fakes, you don't know what to believe, then you'll throw your hands up and believe anything or nothing, and neither one of those options is good. I cannot stress that enough. So I'm going to work with you on some of this stuff, but I need you to be questioning me, your textbook, what other people say, the news. You need to be able to find good sources of information. I'll do my dead level best to always give you the truth, and I will tell you when there's an opinion and something we might debate about an issue, okay? I lean left, but I don't intend to make you be a leftist any more than if I was a far right. I don't care what you believe. I want you to be able to critique stuff, to ask good questions, and to get good answers so you can make informed decisions. That's what's going to help you. That's what's going to help, our state, our communities, our country. Okay? So I promise you I'll do my best, but also to expose you to that. All right, that said, I want to show you one or two last things here, but looking at how, we organize space and settlement patterns and stuff, okay? So these settlement patterns go from, distributed and far apart to nucleated to linear. And so you can see, high settlement patterns around particular rivers. Rivers are always good for that, and certainly coastlines. You do have some cities up in high elevations or that aren't on rivers, but very few of them. Certainly in valleys, but open spaces where there's lots of prairie and farmland. So understand that these places, we decide how to demarcate them. Something decided that these would be the types of fields. It's not very geometrically organized, is it? It's very organic. So we'll see that other places will be organized very differently. So understanding those things is, quite important. And finally, wrapping up here with your cultural baggage, just because of where you were born, and I'm going to just assume that everybody was born in Middle Tennessee. If you weren't, don't be offended. But if you were born in this area of the world, you're going to be probably an English-speaking Protestant Christian of a certain mindset. Of a Southern values or whatever it happens to be. But I want to talk about cultural baggage because this is what you carry with you wherever you go. Like when I tell you go to India or you go to China and your personal envelope of space doesn't exist anymore, that's your baggage. You're going to have to fix that or just decide not to go. So in looking at things like how we build places or how we do things, my uncle, who's in his 80s, was born in a log cabin. And that cabin, honestly, sits on the property of Lord Lynn's Dude Ranch. And so think about who made that, who hewed those logs to build the cabin, and so forth. So what was their major tool? Axe. Certainly a saw too, but an axe. What does that axe do for you if you move out onto the Great Plains? Now this is showing you there are some trees here, but if you've been on the Great Plains, there's one thing that isn't a lot of there. Trees. What do they have? Sod. So sod houses became the norm. And what would you do with your axe? Well, you'll use it to cut the side because there's no trees to cut. And so in demarcating the West, that would be done with barbed wire because you couldn't have, rock fences very much. Certainly didn't have wood fences. So think or consider, I say think about too much, but I do want you to ponder this, but what your language, what your belief system, what your home life was like, and those gender roles and everything else. My children are going to grow up very differently from how you grew up. I grew up as a helicopter. You might have grown up, as a helicopter kid. I grew up as a millennial. I grew up as a latchkey kid. And we'll talk about this in chapter 3 with population. But generational differences really matter. And so just be cognizant of that. Finally, leaving out here the culture of stereotyping. I found these 2 maps, so I'm just going to use them as we exit this chapter to take a look at how we tend to think about places. And the broader they are, the less you know about them. If you ask me to tell you something about a place I don't know about, that's going to be a short story, and I'm going to be very sure of what I say because I don't know what I'm talking about. If you want real information about a place, I can't give it to you in quick bites. I have to really explain a lot because there's a lot of nuance in there. So stereotypes, be careful for them. Generalizations, those are okay, but if you go too far down that line, you're messing up. So what we want to look at here is this. I want you to be introspective. I want you to think closely about what's the word I'm looking for? Epistemology, how we know what we know. How we know what we know. I want you to be reflective in this course. I found this. I love this quote here. But culture hides much more than it reveals. And strangely enough, what it hides most effectively from its own participants. Years of study have convinced me, this writer, that the ultimate purpose of the study of culture is not so much the understanding of foreign cultures as much as the light that study sheds on our own. I'll share this final quote, this connection with you. I married an Indian woman. I liked Indian not from America, dot, not feather. And that's not racist, that's funny. I like the food. I like the cuisine. I had a lot of friends. When I first met Indians from South Asia, I thought they were the nastiest people on earth. I told her this one day. I said they ran a motel and we went in to for some reason, I don't know, and it smelled, I'm using my ignorant words here, it smelled like a goat farm. They burn incense. They use really strong spices and all kinds of stuff. If you don't know Indian people or hadn't been in an Indian restaurant, just trust me on that. But I hadn't been exposed to that. I was a country boy. I came out of the woods, and that's what I thought. And my girlfriend, who became my wife, told me, she said, well, do you know what I thought about your mom's house, the house you grew up in when I first went there? I said, no, what? She said, it stunk. And I'm like, what? We're clean. We don't stink. She says, no, I grew up in a family that doesn't eat meat, and yours eats meat every meal. This place is an abattoir. There's flesh cooked in to every panel, every board, into the paint, into the floor. It smells to high heaven to me, culturally speaking. This is what I mean. To turn that mirror on yourself, to analyze who you really are. And once you find yourself, and once you're honest with yourself, this is a transformative thing. If you're getting a good education, guys, you should be changed by that. There is a metamorphosis that should be going on. Now, I'm not saying you would throw everything you know away. No, at least you'd know why you believe what you believe and why it's important to you. So I really want to try to stress that for you in this semester, in this last lecture from chapter 1. I'll be moving on to chapter 2 very soon, and please feel free to write me emails anytime you want. I hope we can make this a little bit more interactive over the discussion boards. Maybe I'll put a discussion board up if you want to comment on the videos themselves. But as it stands for now, I'm going to let you go, and I'll see you in chapter 2. Have a good day.